Self-government negotiations and division of the Northwest Territories has been an ongoing process for over 2 years. As many of you know, division takes place in April of 1999. That's less than a year and a half away. I spoke to Bob Simpson, Chief Negotiator for the Beaufort Delta region, and Vince Teddy, Inuvialuit Negotiator, on what self-government may mean to this region and where they are at in their negotiations. First, Vince Teddy explains what his role as Inuvialuit Negotiator entitles him to do. Welcome to SUAANGAN. I'm Debbie Gordon-Rubin. The Inuvialuit Self-Government Negotiator, what does that role entitle you to do?
That role entitles me to negotiate with the Chief Negotiator, who is Bob Simpson for the Beaufort Delta, and also for the Gwich'in Self-Government Negotiator, who is Charlie Furlong. And myself, as you said, I'm the Inuvialuit Self-Government Negotiator. I'm appointed and contracted by the Inuvialuit Regional Corporation to assist and also negotiate on behalf of the Inuvialuit at the negotiation table for the Beaufort Delta self-government negotiations. And that's who I work for, Bob Simpson, and also report and take direction from the Inuvialuit Regional Corporation.
Mm-hmm. You hear a lot lately about inherent right to self-government, or just the word inherent right. How do you explain that to elders or to people in the community when they question you about what is inherent right?
Mm-hmm. Well, the inherent right to self-government really is a new phrase which came into existence within the last few years. And basically what the inherent right means, and the definition of the inherent right is that how you govern yourself as Aboriginal people, and we in our case as Inuvialuit in the past, and how we've done government and done business and done our daily lives socially and economically in the past before becoming a part of Canada within the Canadian Constitution. Inuvialuit did govern and did do things on our own. Mm-hmm. And really what the inherent right means, and the definition of it, in my opinion, is that to restore that type of government and to ensure that we become a responsible and ensure that we do our style of government on our own. And in our case right now, what we're doing is negotiating the inherent right within a public system.
Mm-hmm. What does that
means
mean?
a double challenge. It means that we do our business as Inuvialuit and Gwich'in within our communities and within our region, but within a public system, which means we have to take into account public rights, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms within the Constitution, take that into account as we're negotiating the inherent right, which gives us a double challenge at the negotiation table. But that's something that we recognize, and that's something that the federal government prefers us to do, mm-hmm. Negotiate the inherent right within a public system, and that's what we're trying to achieve as we're negotiating the self-government agreement for the Beaufort Delta.
Could you tell me some of the differences from the first field workers survey that was last year about this time, eh? Mm-hmm. And compared to this year, maybe the differences between the two?
I think the biggest difference is the information that we're giving out. It's becoming quite obviously more detailed as we negotiate and we come up with new ideas or ideas that we want to present to people. So the first survey that we did was quite general. I mean, it just basically said, well, here's what we think maybe self-government might be. What do you think? This survey is quite a bit more specific about what we present as far as the structure of government, and asks generally the same kind of questions as the previous survey. And what do people think about regional government, for instance, or where would they like to have the controls, at a community level or the regional level? What type of government would they like to have? So they're similar in some ways, but the information is what's the big difference.
The information that the field workers are giving.
Yeah, and that's always been the focus of our field working program, is to give out information, and the survey is just more or less a tool to focus people's attention and try and get some specific feedback.
Like when they say, okay, we want to tell you a little bit about the public government and Aboriginal government. You've given those types of presentations yourself on what they are. Could you give us kind of a brief overview of how you would explain it to somebody like, say, an elder who called you, or someone who gives you a call and says, gee, I really don't understand these people that are coming and asking these kind of questions?
Sometimes that presentation can be an hour long, but to try and, bring it into a little bit of a concise format is, most of the field workers are going into the household and presenting the idea, the concept of the inherent right, for instance, of self-government for the Inuvialuit and Gwich'in. And that is a right that both the Aboriginal peoples have had before the Europeans have come. So they've always governed themselves. And what we're doing here is really trying to get the territorial and federal government to formally recognize that. Because both those governments are the ones who have the financial resources, etc., to provide government-type programs and services. So we're really negotiating the implementation of self-government. And because we have, we've joined the Inuvialuit and Gwich'in at the same negotiations table, we're also trying something very new here. We're trying to have a form of government that would include all residents, including non-Aboriginal residents as well. And the reason we're doing that is we recognize that the demographics or the populations will change in the future, and we really want to have some protect the Inuvialuit and Gwich'in's governing rights from, intrusion from the other two governments in the future, right? Or the non-Aboriginal people from taking full control over it in the future. So Inuvialuit and Gwich'in will have some guarantees in a public form of government, or a combined government, if you wish, Inuvialuit, Gwich'in, and public government. So that combined government will have a fair amount of control over a wide range of things, education, training, social services, health, some aspects of the administration of justice, for instance, policing, corrections, and some of the court systems and so forth.
What kind of government structure are you trying to pass on the knowledge to the people in the community?
As we're negotiating right now, we're looking at two different models of government. We're preferring what we term the United Community Government, which involves the Aboriginal community government, be it the community corporation within the Inuvialuit communities or the Gwich'in Tribal Council within the Gwich'in communities. And for Inuvik, it's both. Combine that with non-Aboriginal representation, which combined would be the United Community Government, which gives guaranteed representation, as I said, to the Aboriginal people, and representation for non-Aboriginals within one institution at the community level. That's what we're proposing right now. We're early in the stages of negotiating that model. The federal government, the territorial government, and ourselves within the Beaufort Delta are looking at it in a point of view where it meets, presently we're looking at it where it meets the needs of the people, and in terms of Inuvik and Aklavik. And right now, early in the stages of negotiations for the other remaining communities within the Beaufort Delta, we're looking at models of the Aboriginal government, where the Aboriginal government within that community, be it an Inuvialuit community or a Gwich'in community, the Aboriginal community government becomes the government of the community, but taking into account the Canadian rights and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms within the Constitution, voting rights, democratic rights, mobility rights, any rights of a Canadian citizen. We won't take away those rights individually for Canadian people, but that will be worked into within an Aboriginal community government. Those are presently the two models we're looking at the community level. And like I said, we're early in the game and of negotiations, and those are two models that we're basically working from at this point in time.
From the community level, once they're set in place, how are the communities going to be represented at the regional level?
At the regional level, right now, for the regional government, what we're looking at representation is one per community, which means there's 8 communities in the region. They'll each have a seat on the regional government. And right now, we're looking at one at-large representative that will chair or be the mayor at the regional government level. And what I mean by at-large, it means that anyone that is a resident within the 8 communities can run for that one seat for the at-large at the regional level, and they become the chair or the mayor, for instance, at the regional government level.
When they go from the community to the region, and they will be electing so many, like one Inuvialuit, one Gwich'in, and at large. How does that work? And will that at large position or the mayor, if you call it, for the Beaufort Delta region, will they replace the MLAs?
Don't think so. That'll be at a territorial level, and the constitutional development process is trying to work out what would be the new legislative assembly. So there's a separate process from ours that is starting to work on that. I participate as a working group member on that constitutional development process. So that's one form of self-government at a territorial level. So there may be some form of guaranteed representation there as well. Within the region, there will be one representative from each community sitting on our regional council. And so far, we're just talked about one regional at-large person elected, by all the residents within the regions.
And they will represent this region at the territorial level?
Well, the regional council will certainly have a lot to do with the territorial government, because it'll be a government in its own standing. So there'll be, there'll be a lot of interaction between the territorial government and the regional government. There'll be, and the difference between that and municipalities is this regional government will also be dealing with the federal government as well.
How difficult or easy is the process for the Inuvialuit to say, okay, well, for the Inuvialuit and the Gwich'in to agree, or is there already an agreement that they have set in place which they are trying to implement?
Well, both the Inuvialuit and Gwich'in have different approaches, I feel, in governing, and I think we've been successful in trying to marry those together by the establishment of a regional government, but also have a community focus and strong community governments. So the other perhaps differences will be sometimes you have a specific program, language programs, which will have to be maybe administrated or delivered separately, for instance. So we're working out a lot of those right now.
Is it a difficult process to kind of, as you say, marry them together?
I think there could probably be a lot more interaction between the Gwich'in and Inuvialuit leadership and thinking about how they're going to go about implementing this together. Right now they're sort of leaving a lot up to the negotiators to go ahead and negotiate. So I've raised the issue with them is that I need a lot more instructions from them as leaders. I mean, we don't want to end up with I think the people's participation is really critical, and you just can't say, okay, Bob Simpson or the negotiators go off and negotiate a deal. I need very specific instructions. So I've asked them, and we're starting to develop what we call a mandate document, which will list all of my instructions. You know, Bob, this is what you're supposed to get for us. This is what we expect. And we'll have that ready for the leaders to start looking at in January, and hopefully we'll start some community workshops too.
For the training of these positions is for each of the communities, like is that some of the things that they would discuss, like they just finished holding a leadership conference? Is that some of the things that they discuss there, or?
Yes, it's always being discussed. The communities are aware that negotiations for the inherent right to self-government is ongoing in the Beaufort Delta. A big concern that came out of the first fieldwork that we've done last year really highlighted that concern that maybe our people aren't prepared or aren't qualified enough to take on these responsibilities for government services and programs. And they'd like to see that before a community or can take on a program or service, that the people are ready for that, they're qualified, and they're certified, and they're trained for that program and services, that the people and resources are there for them to do it. And that concern came out strongly in the last survey, and that's something that as we're negotiating education, we're going to ensure that we have as much resources and as much qualified people to take on education, for instance, is there, and that will be up to the people to take on that initiative at the community level, knowing that programs and services will be their responsibility, that will give them more of a motivation, more of a get up and go to be ready and be trained and be qualified to take on the responsibility and the authority of those programs and services. And that's something that, you know, as a young person can look forward to and say, you know, that's something I want to do, and then that will give them the motivation to work towards ensuring that when a community takes on a program or service, they can fit right into the job and feel good about doing their job, and also feel good that the community is responsible and has the authority to do that program or service at their own pace whenever they're ready, and they're there to do it.
When you travel to the different communities within the ISR, is that a sense that you're getting that people do understand the Beaufort Delta region is going to have at the community level, at the regional level, and that they're getting ready to take over these different areas of education, social services, and health, and the different programs and services that are there?
Yeah, that's the general opinion and the general feeling I get from the community visits I do, that the people are waiting for negotiations to come to an end, so that once we do have the ability and the power to take on that self-government agreement, then the people are saying, you know, government is home, government is in our communities, government is in our region, rather than in Yellowknife or in Ottawa, where historically it has always been. Now they're kind of gnawing at the bit, so to speak, that, you know, they can't wait to be responsible for their lives and be responsible for their programs and services at the community and regional level. Of course, there's apprehension, there's little worries here and there, because they're looking at our people, they're looking at the community level, at the people, they're looking at the regional level and saying, maybe we're not, but as long as we have the tools ready for them to take over those programs and services, once they're ready, then they'll be able to do it. But if we don't give them the tools to do it, then there's no motivation, there's no sense in carrying on our negotiations for self-government for the Beaufort Delta. But people are in tune, and people are just waiting for self-government.
Do you have anything that you would like to add as the chief negotiator?
Well, I felt fairly strongly about self-government for a long time. I think there's been a great deal of dependency on other governments to run things for people, either out of Yellowknife or Ottawa. So I think this is a great opportunity for local people, Inuvialuit and Gwich'in, to take control and responsibilities over their own governments, and the effect is over their own lives, and have a more direct say, I guess, in how other people and other governments may be able to influence their cultures. So I'm just hoping that our field workers program, workshops, information session, the media is going to hopefully help people to see that this is important and to get involved, because without it, it'll become less meaningful to people, and if they don't feel that they have to participate, what's the point in negotiating it, I suppose. I mean, that's the critical part of self-government, is the people have to take control over the process and the eventual agreement as well.
How important is it for the Aboriginal people to work together?
Well, we can go another way in these negotiations, where the Gwich'in and the Inuvialuit negotiate their own governments for their own people. It's very much, that's the way the style of the negotiations is going in the rest of Canada. The big disadvantage I see in that is that the Inuvialuit and Gwich'in will sooner or later be marginalized, will be considered separate from the rest of Canada, and I don't think that's been too successful for Aboriginal people in Canada. So when we're negotiating a public government, you're going to have a great deal of influence on how other people and other governments will influence your lives as an Inuvialuit and Gwich'in. So you'll be able to dictate to them that they cannot do certain things to you. And that's very unusual. And that's the great challenge. So I think it's really important that the Gwich'in and Inuvialuit work together, especially in places like Inuvik and Aklavik, But the overall bigger picture, that I think if you're able to control a lot of things within the region, you'll be able to control your own developments as people.
And this is the first type of development of this kind of self-government in Canada?
Well, probably the world. The only other place that I know of Aboriginal people being able to directly participate in a public form of government is in New Zealand, where they have, I think, 3 seats in Parliament, and that's about it. So it's very new. We're also building into the self-government agreement, well, because it's so experimental and so new, is ways that if it doesn't work, it's for the Inuvialuit and Gwich'in to establish their own governments and control their own programs and services for their own people.
And the territorial government is in favor of all of this. Like they're more than willing to give up their control.
No, that's the big challenge of the negotiations table. They're very much. See, we have a big, if you wish, an argument on the amount of control necessary for the Beaufort Delta to be effective, I guess, as a government. But on the other hand, we're taking away from the territorial government, and we're taking on kind of provincial type powers as well. So the territorial government will never be like a province down south. But how much of that power do you take away and not make the territorial government totally ineffective? And that's the challenge, is trying to find a balance there, because there's probably a need for a territorial government and to deal with the federal government and you know, deal with a number of items.
And what do you hope the field workers to get back from the community at the second level?
Okay, the second go-around, what we're looking for really is a renewal of our mandate, and also we've negotiated at the main table negotiations with the federal government and territorial government as much as we can go. We do not know really how much the communities really would like to do, really would like to take, whether or not they see this united community government as the model to do, or this Aboriginal government as a model to do. With the feedback that we get from this second go-around, with the facts and the figures and the statistics we get back, that will give us a renewal of our mandate to negotiate at the main table in order for us to go ahead with confidence and with the backing of the people and with the will of the people and negotiate what they want, not what the federal government wants or what the territorial government wants, but what the people at the community level want. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're looking for. The Beaufort Delta leadership is all for that. They say they're continually telling us to go back to the communities, find out what they want in order for you to go ahead with negotiations. And we feel good about that, because that's what we're building. We want to build strong communities. In order for us to build strong communities, we need the people's feedback, we need the people's direction. Mm-hmm. As to what we negotiate within specific programs and services, within financial arrangements, within the different community models we're negotiating, what they want to see take place, what institutions they want to see, what programs and services they want to see. With that feedback, will give us a stronger mandate and a confident position to negotiate within the next year and a half.